Hello YouTube, InsaneJ here. In my last video I showed you guys how to make your very own plugin for Minecraft. But by popular request, in today's video I'll be showing you how to implement the permissions plugin and also have in-game commands so that users can change different properties of the plugin from the game itself. So let's take a look at this. Now, before I start, I should let you know that I'm going to try to make this whole video exactly like I made my other video, so that you'll understand every step of the way. And if you were following in my last video or downloaded the source code for my last video, you should be able to follow along really easily. So let's open up Eclipse. Now, in my last video, I also should mention I was doing a lot of different things. I made it a couple weeks ago, so I had a different wallpaper. But also, I have all my plugins I've been working on here. As you can see, I've been programming a lot. So, alright, that's pretty much it. Just thought I should let you know that. I didn't do this all in one night. It was just a long process. So anyway, let's go into the block changer that we made a while ago, and I'm going to open up the two Java files. So let's first try to implement the permissions plugin. Now I know there are a ton of permissions plugins out there, but I'm just going to use the normal permissions, like 3.1.6 plugin. The normal one, I think it's made by like the Yeti and some other people. I'm just going to use that because that has been the standard for a while, and the other plugins function a little differently. I'm just most experienced with this. But it should be very easy and very similar to hook into other permissions plugins. You'll just have to talk with the people that run them. So just go to bukkit.org. I have it bookmarked over here. It's just bukkit.org. And go to Get Plugins. And what we're going to do is we're going to search for permissions 3.1.6. Sorry for the loud clickety-clacky, by the way. That was just my keyboard. I got a new keyboard to type better when I code and do all this stuff. Anyway, so here's the plugin that I'm going to be implementing. It's the normal permissions plugin, the plugin of tomorrow, the famous one that has 232 pages of comments. You'll know if you're at the right one, I guess. So here it is. Now, right here it says plugin authors, how to hook into permissions. I'm going to open that in a new tab. So it's loading up right there. And I'm going to download the main jar only. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to hit save, and it saves it. And over here is what we're going to be using in a second. So I'm going to close out of the other two tabs. I'm going to scrunch this over to the side. And I'm going to scrunch this over to the side. And we can just go right ahead. So what we're going to want to do is take this and show in Finder. I'm going to just copy it, and I'm going to go, workspace. I'm just going to paste it right into my workspace. You can just paste it on like your desktop. Like I can just paste it onto my desktop if I wanted. But I just prefer it to be over here, because that way I don't delete it by accident and have to like figure out what's wrong with my plugin for a while. So now that it's there, what we want to do is just like what we did with the bucket right here, the bucket code that let us do all these like Java plugin, on enable, on disable, server, plugin manager. Just like we did that, we're going to go into properties, and we're going to go to Java build path, and we're going to add the jar to the permissions plugin. So let's go into documents, workspace, and there's the permissions that we want to open up. So what this does is it just lets us use all the variables, classes, objects, method. It lets us use all the information that the creator of the permissions plugin had. Now, a lot of times people like doing this different ways. I just like doing it this way. I think it's nice and easy and simple. And just like that, we're good. So now over here, this is what the author is telling us to do to implement the plugin. So let's just listen to them. So what they want us to do is import all these different sources. And you'll see this is bucket, but this is com.nijiko.permissions.permission handler. So that's why we needed the permissions.jar in there. That's some more like complicated stuff. So I'm just going to paste that right in there. I'm going to save, and these should be yellow if you put the permissions in correctly. So now let's go down here, and they want us to add this variable. So what this variable does right here is it makes a handler for the permissions plugin that the coder made. Just like up here, the coder made that in the permissions.jar file. And what this does is it's like a plugin manager for permissions. It just lets you access all of the nodes, the files, the properties, lets you access everything from the permissions plugin. If any of you are server admins, you know all the configuration files. This lets the any plugin access them. So we're going to go up here, and we're just going to make that variable. We're just copying and pasting. No errors yet. So let's scroll down here, and now what we want to do is we want to go over here, and on enable, we want to check for permissions, if permissions exist. So we need to make we want to make a method that sets up permissions for us. So let's go down here, all the way at the bottom, We want to make set up permissions. Lucky for us, you don't have to do much work here because the code is right here for setting up permissions. What this does, I'll explain right now. We can just maximize this after we paste it, and let's take a look. So what it does is it makes a version of the plugin. So just like in the listener, we made plugin equals instance, this whole deal. What this does is it makes like an accessible version of the plugin, so you can access the code from a plugin, and we called it permissions plugin. So we made a plugin that accesses the resources from the servers, managers, plugin, permission. So what this does is it makes a plugin that accesses all the properties of the permissions plugin if it exists on the server. So the server's current permissions plugin. Hopefully that made sense. So now what that did is that should have made like a manager. It should have made a way to access all the properties of the permissions plugin. But if the permissions plugin doesn't exist, that's important because not everyone has this permissions plugin, then it says, nope, didn't exist, defaulting to OP or just not doing anything at all. Returns, which just exits out of the method, and it's like, oh, you're screwed, whatever. But on the other hand, if permissions plugin does not equal null, if this did execute all the way through, it makes permission handler, that manager up there, it makes it equal to the handler for this plugin. Easy peasy. It just makes permission handler access the properties of this specific plugin instead of just accessing nothing. And then it says, yep, found permissions plugin, we'll use, and then it gets the name, gets the name of it. So let's clean this up a bit. We want to do, if it didn't work, we want to do log.warning, and we want to do block changer. Permissions system not detected. And then down here, if all that we were doing went through, you want to do log.info, and we're just gonna add that block changer again. If we don't add these brackets in these log.info, we'll get an error. First of all, for log, because log doesn't exist. We have to use that log that we made all the way up here back before. But also, we want to do log.warning. So that it says like, warning, problem, this is happening, and we want to add the brackets so the server runner knows that this is the plugin having the problem, because other plugins might not be having the problem, or something like that. Anyway, so now I'm gonna save, and oh, whoopee, no errors. So there you go. So now we made permissions like access on the server. Now we have a window to access permissions. But the problem we have is that every time the user wants to make a command, we have to check if they have a specific node or if they're an operator on the server. You know, if they don't have permissions, or if they have permissions but haven't set it up, we want them to still be able to use this plugin. So instead of writing a large line of code right here at the if statement, we're just going to go end. We want to do like permissions check. Command sender. No, wait. Permissions check, and then I'm just going to put in sender. That's what's up here. So let's make the method permissions check, because this doesn't exist. I just made that up on the spot, that name on the spot. So let's go down here. Actually, we'll probably do this above setup permissions, because we want that at the bottom. And we're going to make a plugin that returns true or false, called permissions check. And we want it to take a sender. Bada bing. So now what we want to do is check if permissions is enabled and the user has a node you're fine. Return true. But if the server doesn't have the permissions plugin, but the player's an operator, also return true. If none of these things happen, return false. So that's very easy. If permission handler equals null, because remember down here we made permission handler equals something. Well, if the plugin doesn't exist and it already returns and gets out of this method, this line of code will never execute. And permission handler up here, since it doesn't ever have an equal sign, like these have an equal sign, since it doesn't have an equal sign, it never equals anything, it'll be void, it'll be empty space, it'll be nothing. So we can do this line of code just like that. So we go, if the permissions handler is null, but also if the sender is an OP, return true. So there you go. Let's add a bracket there, and then a bracket there. So that's pretty simple. That's pretty simple. But now let's do else if the permissions handler is not null, and if permission handler dot has. Now we need to do a player and a string. So we'll just cast this as a player. Sender. What this cast does is instead of using a command sender, we just make it like a player, like a living entity instead. Casting is just temporarily telling the code to act as if sender's a player instead of what it actually is. Doesn't always work. Like you can't make an int a string through that method, but we'll get to that soon. So player, and if they have the node blockchanger.use. So what this does, if the permission handler has the player as a user in the node blockchanger.use, return true. If none of that goes through, we'll just add brackets here because it's nice and neat. If none of this was true, return false. If none of these code segments executed, then return false. It's a sad day for humanity. Save. Let's see. I forgot a parenthesis. Bada bing. So let's go up here, and we'll see if the command label is blockchanger and the permissions are correct. Then toggle it. Bam. We just implemented the permissions plugin. Didn't take too long, and there are no errors. We can get like one serious error during that whole thing. Hopefully it's the same for you. If it isn't, leave comments immediately. I'd love to help you out, because I had so much trouble doing this the first time I did this. But there you go. Done and done. So now that we're done with that, let's talk about putting in commands. So what we want to do here is, in the first video I talked about all these parameters when we made this method. So I'll just do a little review. The command label is like /stop or /weather. It will be whatever is directly after the slash when a user types in a command. So /blockchanger, blockchanger is the label. But args are the arguments that are sent to the command. So if it's like /weather space stop, weather will be the label, and stop will be will be in the argument list, the argument array right here. Array is just like a list of things. So you could do like a ton of arguments, because an array literally can be like infinitely large. You could just be like a billion like 0, 0, 0. You can do whatever you want. But what we want to do is we want the user to type in /blockchanger space and then a number, and that number will be the block ID for what they want the blocks they hit to change into. So like 35 was the block ID for wool. We could do 5, the block ID for wood. The user could type in /blockchanger space 5, and if they have the correct permissions, then whenever they hit stuff, it'll change it to wood instead of wool. So what we need to do here is, first what we want to do is we want to make a variable, and we want it to be public int ID. And what this does is it makes an integer called ID equal to 35, and it's public, meaning both of these files can access it freely. And what this does is ID equals 35, ID by default equals wool, but down here we'll change it. We'll do if args.length, come on, if args.length is greater than 0, we'll make ID equal to, let's see, what we want to do is we want to make, see, this is a list of strings. We want to make it an integer. What we have to do is we have to type in integer dot parse int arg0. So what this does is it makes ID equal to the integer version of the first element. Now, since Java and arrays and all that stuff starts counting at 0, it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. arg0 will be the first element. And parse int is parsing something is like translating it from one type of object to another, or changing a string to an int. And if the argument is like 5 and not like the letter B, this should work just fine. So we'll do that. If it's greater than 0, ID equals that. Else, if the arguments is equal to 0, then it just toggles it. And we want to add brackets around here, now that it's longer than one line of code. Save. Alright, so now we want to go into block changer listener and use ID instead of 35. Really easy, just type in plugin.id. What this does is, since plugin is equal to the currently running version of this, it'll just access the current ID number. Ooh, I just got an email. Alright, so there we go. That should work, actually. I think we're done. I think that's it. There might be one or two errors or problems once we start running it, but this should be just fine code. You should feel very happy if you're where I am right now. If you're not, of course, let me know, but we'll see. So now let's go .export as a jar file, and this is the plugin I was working on last. You should check out my plugins, by the way. Link in the description. And we're going to make it block changer. And make sure you don't need these things checked, and if you hit these down bars, you just want these two checked. Nothing else needs to be checked. And hit finish, and we're going to minimize Eclipse, and we can close out of that. And now I have blockchanger.jar. So now I'm going to pop in, this is just my folder, I have all like my video material, and here is all the stuff we did last time in the last video. And here's the plugin.yml. You should remember this is like the config file. Why is this taking so long to open up? Hello. Alright, there it is. So this is like, just tells the server what to load up. Well, we're just going to make this version 1.1, or duplicate, whatever. I don't care if it's not, I don't know, locked. Alright, version 1.1. And, okay. And then we can actually add description permissions block changer .use, and save that bad boy. And it should have the little drop down, blah blah blah, plugin.yml on the desktop. Boom. So now this baby, this bad boy has that stuff. We're gonna go into my bucket server, my little test bucket server that I use to test on my plugins. And we're just going to drag in blockchanger.jar. And again, I think we did this last time. We need to open this up, extract it. I saw in the descriptions of my last video, someone said you have to use WinZip instead of WinRAR. Windows users might have a little tricky, but for me, it should be very simple. I use the unarchiver, by the way. That's why the icon's different. I just use that so I can extract more formats. You don't have to, I guess, if you don't want to, I don't think, but I do. So now that we have me, that's all the code we did, and the plugin.yml config and no meta-inif, we compile that into a zip again, and then we just change that name to blockchanger.jar. Use jar, drag and drop, replace. You can take that folder, pop it in the bin. Looks good. Now let's start up this server, and let's see. Now I don't have the permissions plugin enabled. So first we're going to run this plugin as if no permissions are enabled, and if there are any errors, we'll catch them immediately. Then we'll see if the permissions plugin is enabled without a node or within it. We can test it out a bit. So we went to this isn't really part of the tutorial. This is just starting the server up. I made so many tutorials on this stuff. I don't think I'm ever gonna do it again, man. People just keep complaining every time there's an update. Alright, so here we go. We are starting up our temporary server. I'm just running it in offline mode, so sometimes my internet goes down. I can still do all this stuff. And there we go. The server started, and it says block changer has been enabled, permission system not detected, and it has the little warning thing, which is good. That's exactly what we want, because no permissions plugins here. We have a folder called BB. I just called it BB because those are just the two keys I hit first. These are like all my oh, I double-clicked something. These are like all the plugins that I use or test, and then I don't want to implement on the server. So that's, you can just ignore that. But no permissions plugin, that's just fine. There shouldn't be one. Anyway, let's log into my Minecraft account. Man, I keep hitting things. So now that the server's running, Minecraft's launched, we can just type in localhost. I don't really think it matters, but I just localhost because I didn't put an IP in the properties file. But that's server running. I shouldn't even talk about server running here. This is a tutorial. So let's log in. Sometimes I lag a little bit when I join. Hopefully that doesn't happen this time. Alright, so now that I'm in our little temporary server, if it doesn't lag very much, this will be nice and smooth. We're going to go ahead into the console, and we're going to de-op in Sanjay. Just in case I'm an OP on here, sometimes I OP myself for plugins. So I'm not an OP, and I'm going to try to type in /blockchanger. Nothing happens. And if I hit anything, nothing happens. You could put in like a warning message to the user if you want. I didn't, but nothing happens. It's as if it never happened. But if I type in blockchanger 5, nothing happens as well. But what I meant to do is if I OP myself, and I type in /blockchanger, bada bing, it's been enabled, and it changes everything to wool. But let's do /blockchanger 5, changes everything to wood. And then I can do /blockchanger 11, this will be funky, changes everything to lava. So there you go. And you know, if you had the permissions plugin enabled, that was a horrible jump. But if you had the permissions plugin enabled, you could test out the blockchanger.use node, do all that stuff. Actually, this video is going long enough. I'm wasting too much of your time, so I'm just going to let you guys figure that out on your own. But as of right now, you can use commands in-game, and you kind of know the starts of how to use commands and make them work throughout a whole plugin. And permissions works if permissions plugin isn't enabled, and OP works. Everything should work just fine. If it doesn't, leave a comment in the comment section. You can test out everything on your own time, but since permissions is a whole other plugin, I'm just not gonna bother with that anyway. So alright, hope you guys really enjoyed this video. The reason you're seeing nothing right now is just because the program I was using, it's called Camtasia. I used to use ScreenFlow, but the new update made me pay $100 more. I'm not gonna do that. I'm using Camtasia, and it forced quit, but it saved all the files, so I'm just... Anyway, hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe. I'll be having a ton of new videos. Oops, sorry. I'm going to be having a ton of new videos out, hopefully a lot this weekend, some next week on Tuesday and Thursday. A lot of them will be about Minecraft and plugin development and cool things like that. I don't have like an HDP VR yet. I've been really planning on getting one, but I don't have one. But I do have Steam in games like Half-Life, so if I see a little bit of interest, maybe we can do some playthroughs of that, maybe on my second channel if people don't like it that much. But, I don't know. People seem to like my commentaries on stuff. So please let me know if you want commentaries on videos. But that's about it. Awesome. Hope you guys have a great end of your week. And thanks for watching the whole video to the end. You are awesome. Thank you so much.